Good morning, church. Hope you're having a great day, and thank you for tuning in to our series going through the book of Philippians as we're looking at the joy of the Lord, trying to get our strength from Him and keeping our minds focused on what He wants us thinking about, how He wants us thinking as we're approaching various aspects of life. And we've been here in chapter 1 of Philippians dealing with circumstances and looking at Paul's circumstances and how he approached things. And as he sees his circumstances not as just problems that he is facing, but as they are opportunities for him in the midst of his circumstances, in the midst of all his disappointments and setbacks, he sees them as opportunities. And we talked about how God used his chains, his bondage that he's in, being in prison, sees that as opportunity. Yesterday we talked about his critics and how he even sees his critics and those that oppose him as tools in God's hands to even shape the message going out and for people to have an opportunity to be saved. The one we want to look at today is his crisis and the crisis that he's in and how God is going to use this to magnify Christ in his life. And verse 20 and 21 is what we want to focus in on for this morning. The Bible says, "According to my earnest expectation and my hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." He says there that Christ would be magnified in his body. He says, I'm not going to back off from my boldness. I'm as bold now as I was then. And the reason he's bold is because he can see the fact that God was going to be magnified. Jesus Christ was going to be magnified through his life, through all that he's doing because of what he's going through, and that God was going to use that in a greater way to impact others for Christ. Because of his chains, Christ was known. Because of his critics, Christ was preached. But because of his crisis, Christ was magnified. And that's really the thrust here in this section. But it brings up an interesting question. How can man magnify God? I mean, God is so big and he's so strong and he's so awesome. How is it that we can magnify him? You think about stars, and I've read this as an analogy, and this is a good way to think about it. Stars are bigger than a telescope. They're certainly further away than we are, but a telescope is able, by the lenses, for us to look at the stars and bring them closer than, at least in appearance, than where they actually are. The believer's life is to be like a telescope, to where we bring Christ closer to people so that they get a closer image of what Christ looks like, a clearer image of what Christ looks like. As we're living our lives, we're supposed to be living like Jesus Christ and endeavoring to live a life of Jesus Christ, or I should say allowing Christ to live his life out through us. And as we do that and we're faithful to him and yielded to him, the world can see Christ closer because of our walk with him. And we, being like a telescope, bring Christ closer to the eyes of a lost world. And so we're magnifying Christ that way. On the flip side, a microscope kind of does the opposite. It takes things that are really small and makes them look big. And to the unbeliever, Jesus really isn't all that big. In fact, when you think about some of the parables that Jesus talked about, one in particular, the parable of the mustard seed, is the one I think about. And he says, he said, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed that is the smallest of all of the herbs. And yet when it's planted and it comes up, it becomes one of the biggest. And that's a picture of, it looks so tiny and insignificant, but it becomes, once it's planted, it becomes the biggest of all things. And Christ to the average person in the world is nothing. He's nothing. He's nobody to them, to the average person. He's seemingly insignificant. And as Christians, as we are magnifying Christ, we are to make him big, and believers can live even through their crises and through their hardships in a way that magnifies Jesus Christ, to where the world can get a bigger picture of Christ and a clearer picture of Christ. They can see him clearer and closer through our lives, and they can also see him bigger and more important in our lives, because as we go through these things, as we face the hardships of life, it really is an opportunity for us to solidify ourselves and for us to be faithful because the world is watching. I think about over in 2 Corinthians where Paul talks, he's writing this letter in chapter 3 where he says, do we begin again to commend ourselves? Or need we, as some others, epistles of commendation to you, or letters of commendation from you? And then he goes on to say this, ye are our epistle, written in our hearts, known and read of all men. The idea of we are living epistles. An epistle is just a letter. That's a letter that's written. And he compares the believers there as a letter that's written that all men can read. That we're like this storybook that is being told to the world, and that story is the story of Christ, and it's a picture of Christ as we're just living our lives. Maybe you've heard it said, it's a famous saying, that you are the only Bible that many people will ever read. And the average person's not going to pick up a Bible and read it, but they're going to watch you, and they're going to watch your life and to see how you're facing things. And so as we're facing different struggles and different burdens and different hardships, and we endeavor to be faithful to the Lord, people can see Christ in us as we're going through those things. One thing that's always been an encouragement to me, I love listening to great musicians, people that are very talented in what they're doing and being able to sing praises to the Lord and in their abilities and all. But what really blesses me more than just pure talent is somebody who has been living for the Lord for an extended period of time. They've been through a lot of storms of life, and yet they still have a song in their heart to sing. That always encourages me more than all the talent and all the showcasing, which is fine and it has its place. But what really ministers to my heart the most is somebody who has been through hardships and they've been through some struggles and they face some things and they still love Jesus. And they're not bitter, they're not all beaten up and just throwing in the towel. It encourages me to see somebody who's gone through things, even sometimes more things than I've been through, and they still love the Lord. I look at those people and think, man, how do they do that? Where is that grace? I need some of that. And I want to tap into whatever it is that they're accessing and the strength that they have to get through their hard times and their struggles. And a lot of times ministries are born out of hardships. People go through some incredible traumatic experiences, and God gives them grace to get through it, and they're able to turn that around to be a ministry to somebody else and to help other people going through their afflictions. Certainly 1 Corinthians 1 is talking about that, where it talks about the God of all comfort, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them that are in any trial. That God uses the experiences that we've been through as a means of ministry to other people. As we learn to hold on to God's grace and His strength through our crises, we're able to minister on a greater level, on a deeper level, to other people that are going through other things. Certainly that's true for a lost world that doesn't know anything about the Lord. And all they know is these crazy Christians that go to church and they talk about Jesus all the time. We don't really know anything about them. That's really kind of the limitation of what they know, the limits of what they know about Christians. What they need to see is some substance as we're going through hardships and we still have God's joy in us and maintaining our faithfulness to the Lord as we're going through those struggles. That will resonate in the hearts and minds of lost people more than anything else. I've recently heard some people telling me some stories of some family members that they've talked to, and they're lost, they don't know the Lord, and they look at them as, how can you keep on going? You guys have been through so much, and how is it you still do this Jesus stuff, and you're still enduring all these things? That's a shining testimony. Maybe they can't put those things together yet in their minds, and they haven't been able to put together it's the Lord and it's walking with the Lord, and that maybe has not clicked in with them yet. But stay faithful, because you're preaching a sermon to them, and through your faithfulness, through your crisis, and through your hardship, that is preaching a stronger sermon than just the Romans Road. Not to diminish the Romans Road. You make sure you know how to witness to somebody, but the ability and the opportunity to suffer for the Lord and still be faithful preaches volumes of truth to somebody who does not know the Lord. And so I want to encourage you to stay faithful as you're going through things. See your circumstances in God's hands, whether it's a bond like Paul was in, and his chains, or it's critics, people coming at you and launching all kinds of accusations out on you, or you're just suffering, you're going through some hardships, health problems or financial difficulties, whatever it may be, you're just struggling and having a hard time, just realize this is opportunity for you to magnify Christ in your body, and God will give you ample opportunity to do so. And so I want to encourage you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Keep your eyes on Jesus, and may God bless you.